Michael Turner is a Geelong great, a member of the club's team of the century and a former captain. Yet he has been at odds with the Cats throughout the 25 years since his retirement. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
How's the relationship between Michael Turner and the GFC at the moment?
The easiest way to explain it, I suppose, is that my father played for Geelong, so he's a double premiership player. I played there for 15 years, and I think when you finish your career, you've got aspirations to coach, and I was interviewed for the coaching job twice, which you mightn't realise with Malcolm.
Which two positions?
Well, when Malcolm Blight got it when I retired, it was indicated to me by a couple of board members at that time that I had a chance to coach down the track, so you have that in your mind, and Malcolm Blight should have got the job. The strategic mistake I made was Ken Gannon offered me the assistant coach's job, and Malcolm had to verify it, and I knocked it back and went and coached Werribee because your ego takes you away from the place, I suppose, it's rejected you. So, but Malcolm got the job, and then the second time was when Gary Ayres got the job after Malcolm left, and that was fair enough. He was the appointed person. But I think as an ex-player, an ex-captain, that you just want to be involved in the club. And then there was a couple of opportunities as time went on when football managers' positions came up that it was indicated that I had a fair chance of getting one of those positions, and I didn't. And in the end, for my own peace of mind, I really just had to walk away from the club and forge my own career, look after my family, look after my lifestyle and go surfing and work for AFL Victoria, which I had for 20 years running the Geelong Falcons. So you've just got to move on. You've
got a lot of pride, though. I suspect that your pride was pricked and you just sort of said, well, stuff them.
I think the last time it was because...
sorry, interrupt you. Was the last time when Neil Baum got the footy ops job?
Yeah, and there's no qualms about that either, because Barmy's a great bloke and he's done a fantastic job, and Geelong have had 10 years of sustained success. They've done really well. But as an ex-player, you'd like to be a part of that success also, and I think I've proven over time that I'm a good administrator at what I do. But I've got no problems with the Barmy one. The problem I had was that the senior board member of the Geelong Football Club, when the review was going on with Mark Thompson, which you remember, and Gary Davidson and all that, there's a lot of speculation about me. I approached a board member to see whether the speculation was correct. Within probably 24 hours, I had a phone call from another senior board member indicating that I was going to be the next football operations manager of Geelong and to start preparing. So, as I do, I prepared a flow chart of positions and all that and gave it to them. Unfortunately, all the people that I had on the flow chart got jobs and I missed out. So, at that time, Mike, I was pretty disappointed about it. I was bitter about it, and I just, for my own peace of mind, walked away and said, well, look, I've got to forge my own career and I can't be, thinking about this all the time. And then, of course, where you're tagged is that they had their 150-year celebration a couple of years later, and it was still a bit raw for me, and I didn't go.
Was that a mistake?
Yes. Well, in retrospect, it probably was, yeah. I mean, I had everyone come at me to try and get me to go. Sam Newman rung me, Ken Gannon rung me, Andrew Buse rung me, Barry Stoneham, Billy Brownless came and saw me. But look, I really in my mind thought the Geelong Football Club, or not the Geelong Football Club, I've got no problem with the Geelong Football, a person at the Geelong Football Club or persons had done the wrong thing by me, and I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I didn't want to be annoyed with the Geelong Football Club and then go to one of their functions and be a hypocrite.
What did you say to those blokes when they're saying, come on, Mick, we've all had problems along the way, just come because you're a part of this footy club, and the Turner family is such a big part of the footy club.
Yeah, and I don't think Mum was too happy that I didn't go either, because out of respect to Dad. But look, I'd been to a lot of Geelong functions. I've been to the team of the century. That was a much bigger function, and my whole family were there. And
but you were in that team, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. My father was on one wing and I was on the other.
The Silvanis did it at Carlton, but I'm not sure there's anyone else. So there's the Turners at Geelong and the Silvanis at Carlton. It's a massive honour, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic honour, and that was a great night. I mean, Dad had died and Mum was there, and I had two tables, and even though people say I'm a bit tight, I paid for one table and got the other one for free, and I had Ricky Barham and all of my good friends there, and the team and my sons were both there, my wife, and the team of the century night was a fantastic night.
You were a pretty good player, Michael. 240 games,
well, that's
280 goals.
Yeah, well, that's
a good number for a winger.
Yeah, well, it was a long career. It was a 15-year career, and I had a fair few injuries. I missed, quite a few games with injury, well over 80. So maybe if I had a better run with injury, I might have played 300, which takes you into another status. But I had 15 years of football at Geelong, and look, it was challenging. I'm not a real football head. There's other things in my life that interest me, but I pursued football because I was good at it. If I had a choice, I actually played the drums as a young bloke. I would have been in a rock band. That would be my first choice.
Really?
Yeah, and second choice would probably be a surfer. Like I would have liked to have been a surfer like a Wayne Lynch, that style of surfer, but I could surf but not at that level. And football took me in a direction because I was good at it. So you go and play football.
So how passionate were you about the footy? I mean, were you nervous before games?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, look, I was a Geelong supporter. I went and watched Geelong. Dad obviously played. I love the Cats, you know, and I got nervous before games. But look, football, when you play for 15 years, as anyone will tell you, is a challenging thing. And you have your ups and downs, you have injuries, you have controversies, you have problems with the club contracts. We didn't have player managers at that time. AFL clubs at that time, or VFL clubs, virtually owned you. You couldn't get a clearance. I had clubs like Richmond and Collingwood chase me quite a bit, but you couldn't leave the club. Not that I wanted to, because the money wasn't there to leave, and it was very difficult to leave. So there were challenges there, but it was a long career. You
didn't win the best and fairest at Geelong, which I must say surprised me.
Yeah.
Because you're in the top 20 at the club for games played and for goals kicked.
Yeah.
No BNFs.
No, well, I just, as a wingman, I thought, I was a little bit inconsistent at sometimes. I'd play really good games and play some ordinary ones, so the votes didn't build up. And quite often in those days, you'd get beaten by ruckman, and nothing against Rod Blake or John Mossop, but the big ruckman who played in the centre and played a kick behind the game, got a lot of marks, a lot of possession and a lot of votes. So, I mean, I was happy to be runner-up. I think I was runner-up 3 times.
I bet you weren't, Mick. I bet you're fibbing about that.
Well, it would be nice to win a best and fairest, because it, again, gives you a bit of status, I suppose.
Which is the one that you should have won, do you think?
In 1980, I came home with a fairly big rush. I had a big season in 1980. This was past when Sam Newman retired and before Gary Ablett and Greg Williams. So, I'm not pumping up my own tyres, but I was probably the marquee player at Geelong at the time, and we were in the finals under Billy Goggin. We were top of the ladder. We got knocked off in the preliminary final. I had a big game out at Waverley. So 1980, I was probably at my peak, and after that, I had a couple of pretty bad injuries to my knee and my Achilles and that, which maybe slowed me down a little bit. 1980,
Geelong tops the ladder.
Yep.
Goes out in straight sets.
Yep.
1981, you finished second, I think, after the home and away series.
Yep.
No grand finals in either of those years.
Yeah, no, it was disappointing. We had a really good build-up. Rod Olsen was at the club before Billy Goggin came, and he really did get the club very organised. He was a fantastic bloke, Rod Olsen, good coach, but very good organiser. And then Billy Goggin got the job in 1980 and put us to the top of the ladder. We could not get over Collingwood in the preliminary final, got beaten, which I played in. The next year we got peaked to the club, side bottom missed the bus, there was a balls up. We went to Waverley, I was injured. And
you had crook ribs, did you?
I had crook ribs, and if we had won that game and got to the grand final, I was going into hospital that night to get a nerve block put in so I could actually play in the grand final. So we couldn't get over Collingwood again, and the next year in 82 we had an ordinary year and Billy Goggin was sacked, and that was pretty much a Geelong Football Club at that time. It was pretty political, and a lot of times in my 15-year career there were good people there, but a lot of times it was pretty dysfunctional. You
mentioned Gary Sidebottom and the bus.
Yep.
What's your version of what happened there?
I think you've got to understand how Billy Goggin works, and I got on well with Billy Goggin. He was a very good technical coach, and he'd get into your head. And if I was having an ordinary run, he'd really give it to me and test me out a bit. Now that suited me, my personality. Didn't suit every player, and I'm sure with the Gary Sidebottom one, they dropped him, but they were always going to play him. But someone didn't tell him that he was going to play.
Really?
Yes. And whether that was Billy or whether it was Jeff Ainsworth, chairman of selectors, whoever it was, someone didn't tell him. And when the bus used to leave Geelong, people used to get picked up on the way. You'd meet the bus. He was going to be picked up at Lara, where Geelong bought him a farm, and he didn't show up and catch the bus. Now, whose fault's that?
So didn't someone ring him?
Well, whether they should have rung him or not, whether Billy should have rung him or whether Ainsworth should have rung him, he's still a very highly paid player.
Yep.
Living at Lara, the bus is going past. He should have been on the bus. So I blame, some of the club officials, but also blame Gary Sidebottom.
Cool, I understand that, but if you get to Lara and Gary Sidebottom's not there, Lara's not Los Angeles. I mean, didn't someone go looking for him and sort of say, "Hey, Gary, you're supposed to be playing with us today"?
Well, dysfunctional.
We're in the preliminary final.
That's right, and we needed him.
1981. You mentioned Brian Peake. He comes across from WA and probably the biggest arrival of any player in my time in football. Yeah. A helicopter to Cardinia Park. Yeah. He's unveiled as the next, almost like as if he was supernatural. Yeah. What are your memories of Peaky?
Oh no, I've got good memories and all those things. Look, Brian Peake was a fantastic state of origin player. I played against him for Victoria when we played West Australia. He was unbelievable, and he was a great player for East Fremantle. And Geelong chased him for a long time to the fact that they thought if we get Brian Peake and Gary Sidebottom, another forward, that we'd win a premiership. So I can understand the club's tactics on doing that, but it was the level that they went to get him. He flew in. I had no problem with the helicopter coming down. It was great promotion. There was 10,000 people at the ground. But, I think I was the highest paid player at the time at Geelong. I was on about $45,000 to $50,000. And one night in a hotel in Geelong, Brian had a couple and I'd had a couple, and whether he was lying or not, and I don't think he was lying, he told me his package was $120,000. Now, that didn't go over all that well with me, Mick.
I don't think you would have liked that at the time, Michael.
I didn't. I don't think other players did either. And And Brian, 13 games later, again, after playing for 13 games, was made captain of the club. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been at the club, but to make a player captain after 13 games...
So they took the captaincy off Ian Nankervis?
Yeah. They were bad decisions in my book because it mucks up the culture of your club. Players become disenfranchised, they become disappointed, and loyal players like the two Nankervis brothers, they shouldn't be treated that way.
You kicked 4 goals 20 times, 4 or more goals 20 times in your career. Amazing for a winger. Did you kick 5 on my favourite Melbourne player, Robbie Flower, one day?
Well, Robbie and I had a lot of great battles on the MCG, and Ron Barassi, in his knowledge, put him to the back flank one day at Geelong, and I did play on him, and I was lucky enough to kick 5 on him. But, Robbie Flower beat me a lot of times, and I suppose I beat Robbie a few times. I used to actually build myself up mentally to play on Robbie Flower because it's a great battle, and in those days there were a lot of great wingers around.
There were.
Schimmelbusch and Greg and Barham. And
who was the toughest? Who was the one
skill-wise
who you were most fearful of if he had a big day that he could embarrass?
Look, Robbie Flower was a great player to play on. Schimmelbusch was very hard to play on. Keith Grigg, because of his size, was very hard to handle. So there were a lot of great wingers. Every week was a challenge. You had Merv Nagel, Gary Folds, Doug Hawkins. I can run through lots of them. So it was a real battle each week.
You were made captain at Geelong, but there's I don't know, fact or fiction, that Tommy Hafey's preference was Neville Bruns and the board overruled him. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption. I think at the time, the feeling I was getting that Neville was probably in a good position to get the job. But I think in terms of when the board met, I think there were people on the board that sort of favoured me, and the question was asked about Neville Bruns and Michael Turner, and the board came to a decision with Tommy that it was going to be with Michael Turner. So, look, I was really thrilled to be captain at Geelong, and it certainly made me a better player. You're captain, there's a lot of responsibility, so it makes what I was talking about before with attitude. You've got to accept that responsibility, and you've got to perform every week because you're the captain of the club. So I really enjoyed being captain, so that's why I was probably disappointed when I was sacked.
Was there a day when you came off the ground at Geelong and thought you'd let yourself and the club down?
Not as captain, I didn't.
No, just in your career.
In my career?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I always categorise... I was always happy after a game, and I think most players are the same, and this is not being selfish. When the team won and you played well, you felt really good. If the team lost and you played well, you were probably pretty satisfied. When you felt really... No, you were.
No, that's honest. Most blokes wouldn't say that.
And that's just being honest. And I even say that to the boys, at the Geelong Falcons. Your number one responsibility to the team is you've got to play well yourself. Because if you play well and the other players play well and you put it into a team aspect, the team's got every chance of winning. So I come back again, and it's not selfish. If Geelong win and I play well, I'm over the moon. If the Geelong got beat and I played well, I was probably satisfied because I knew I contributed to trying helping Geelong win. The days you were disappointed was when Geelong lost and I played a bad game, because then you walk away and say, well, I've let the team down.
After the break, the Ablets. 1984, you're captain of the Geelong Footy Club.
Yep.
A couple of blokes called Gary Ablett and Greg Williams lob on the scene.
Yeah, they were handy.
What are your memories? There's a famous memory. Greg Williams sat in that chair 2 years ago and said he's playing his first practice game for the Cats.
Yep.
And he said, Turner, despite the fact you were captain, stand over there.
Yep.
You ignored him because he's a chubby little bloke from Bendigo.
I don't think I did ignore him, actually.
Well, he said that. He said that you didn't take any notice of him the first time.
That's a true story. And when Greg first came down to Geelong, we knew he'd been rejected by Carlton quite a few times because they had such a great midfield. And he came to Geelong and Tommy Hafey gave him the chance. But you could see at training how dedicated and how skillful he was. And we played a practice game down at Anglesea, and I actually went to Tommy Hafey at the time and said, look, don't worry about playing Brian Peake in the centre. Greg Williams needs to play in the centre because he's going to make 15 blokes play better with his handball. Play Brian Peake, ruck, rover or forward. So we went to a practice game up the bush, up the Murray where our zone was, and we were playing a game against the Kangaroos, and the game had been going for a while. I was playing on Gary Cowton on the wing, and Greg Williams was playing in the centre, and he just came to me and said, look, when the ball's bounced, if you read it and I read it and you think I'm going to get it, just run forward. So that happened. The ball went towards the ruckman. He tapped it to Greg. I could see what was happening. I just took off and he hit me with a 30-metre handball right onto my chest.